welcome to Layback with Betfair. Joined by the A-team, we're back.
Hello, welcome to Layback with Betfair Education Series, Episode 3. I'm Tom Haylock, joined by Trav and Nick Noonan. Believe it or not, they are brothers. I know they don't look alike, but they are brothers. I welcome you in. Trav, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Tom. Glad to be in here.
Nico, you well?
Yeah, going well. No complaints so far, so we'll see how we go.
It's good. You've been out at Caulfield this morning and filmed a little piece on yourselves, but I want to get a bit of background about you both. You're born into racing, Trav, is that right?
Yeah, definitely born into racing. I don't think it's something we necessarily chose. So for a bit of a background, Dad was a stud manager for a fair period of time in the early 90s. He's probably the most notable horse he dealt with was Utilising, who won a Melbourne Cup. And then he eventually went into training. And during that period of him being a stud manager, Mum worked at Pat Hyland and Greg Eurell stables. And yeah, they sort of just made sure that we were very much in the racing game from a very early age. I was talking to Mum in preparation for this show, and I said, "Oh, what's that?" Like the first time I ever went to the races, and she thought I was 6 weeks old. So
there you go.
There you go.
Nick, same story, obviously. Your brothers. But,
Yeah.
Did you ever have a choice between racing or anything else, or was it always racing?
No, I was pretty keen on footy when I was younger, and Dad would always sort of try and push me to really try and pursue that a bit more. But yeah, sort of once I got to, I'd say 14 or 15, footy was at 2 o'clock. I'd probably rather watch the races, sort of wanted to get back and watch the races. But yeah, definitely born into it. I think my first memory at the track, I was probably 3 or 4 down at Mornington one day when we had a winner, and I can sort of half remember that. So yeah, it's been a long time in racing. Some people, you think people sort of say, oh, you're quite young, but you've really been in the game 25 years. Like,
That's amazing.
Remember horses from when I was 4 and 5. So it's been a bit of a journey so far, and it's going well.
Just on that, we are quite young in terms of racing parlance. Was there any struggles around age or struggling to get into the game or earn respect? It is a bit of an older crowd, or you guys growing up in racing, it was a bit easier?
I think it's sometimes very hard to get opportunities in terms of, because people just say you're young, and then it can take a little while to show that you're capable with no one giving you the right opportunities at times. But I think for the most part, people I've never had a problem with being respected.
Yep.
And I've been working in racing since 17. So, and probably in media from a very, very young age. So, I don't think for the most part, I think it's really good. Most people, if you're willing to do the hard work and you're willing to show up and show that you can perform, people will give you their chance. It's just getting that first initial opportunity, which can be the hard bit.
Was there ever any major races, any early memories, anything that you said, gee, I love this game, I want to do this for a living?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Real early days, so I would have been 4 or 5, I think, when this happened. Like
You got a good memory?
Sunline Northerly for me was
right.
That whole period, that 2001 spring, I was hooked. They're the first sort of races I really remember watching with real intent, and I couldn't sort of understand the Cox Plate drama of 2001. Like, I was just obsessed with that. With Viscount and the squeeze in the middle and the West Roars for Northerly as he gets up on the line.
I was there that day, and I agree. Northerly, those battles, same kind of era. So I would have been 15, 16 around that time, and obsessed with racing and cutting bits of the Herald Sun out and following the form and stuff like that. And I agree. Northerly, Sunline, Viscount. I backed Northerly the 2 years he won it, and backed him in the Caulfield Cup. What about you, Nick? Is there any big memories?
Early days, I was a big Elstrom fan.
Yep.
I remember going to Elstrom's Caulfield Cup where he beat Mackay Diva. I remember going to Lonhro's Australian Cup, and we had the Lonhro merch. We had the Lonhro flags, but I think I had the Elstrom hat actually, and you were Team Lonhro. But I remember watching that race.
Got the one up on your brother?
I would have been 4 or 5. So like a lot of memories like that. Probably never a moment where I was like, oh, this is where I want to go into. Trav was probably more focused on the the racing side and those big races. I was probably when I was younger, was more focused on the horse.
Yep.
Like I was really in love with our horses that we had, and would always go to the races. Sort of watch them on Saturdays, even if they were battling around, in the equivalent of 58s now. I can still remember a few of those old boys that, learnt a lot dealing with them in the stable. So probably wasn't until I was a little bit older. Like I was always really liked racing, but till I was older where I thought, oh, this is probably a path I want to go down, more the the racing sort of side and the media side than just sticking with the horses.
We're going to get to both what you're doing at the moment. You both do slightly different things, but I want to jump to your first winner together, as you've owned horses, and you had your first winner Melbourne Cup Day. Wasn't it Flemington?
No.
Where was it?
At Echuca. So I think growing up around horses, it was always like never a question. We wanted to own, when we were old enough to own horses and race them with Dad and race in our family colours. Had grandparents that bred race horses, and that's kind of like some of our best memories as kids. They actually were able to sell one of our best horses to Macau for a fair sum of money in the mid 2000s, and I reckon from there it was like, we want to be able to do this ourselves. So while we haven't bred any or got any sort of yearlings yet, we started with a few tried horses.
Yep.
Unfair Dismissal's been terrific for us. He's probably the banner horse, and
that wasn't the one that won. That was
no, that wasn't the one we won. But there's a bit of a story behind that, because Nick had an opportunity to get a share in Unfair Dismissal, and he knocked it back. So
he's won about 250,000.
He's won a lot of money since then. He's won about 7 races for us, and he's owned by the whole family, so cousins, grandparents, Dad, and Nick missed out. So it's a bit of a running joke. So he had to find his horse, and you found Lonhro.
So you found a horse, $4,000, bought it online, and it won a few races?
Yeah, he was the first owner update we got from Dad when we got Lonhro wasn't great. You couldn't put it to air. He was walking the box, and there was a few sleeves in there, and saying we should just send him back to where he came from, pretty much. But put full faith in Dad. I said just work a few things out with him, and you got him going. And then Melbourne Cup Day, he was able to absolutely bolt in at Echuca. Did all the form on the race, picked the perfect race. It was a high weight, I think it was a high weight restricted 58 or something, and there was one other horse to beat, and it got out the back, and we sort of sat right up the front. Campbell Ruler gave him a great ride. So first winner on Melbourne Cup Day. We nearly went close with Deputy on Melbourne Cup Day in the 3200. We backed Tiger Moth in the Cup, and that was a bit of a sick beat. And then Deputy got beat, like it was at Echuca and it looked like he won. Got beat by a nose, and that was nearly the first winner a few years before on Cup Day. But then Lonhro, it's probably still my best result on the punt. Actually, had a really good crack at him that day, and he's gone on with it since. He had a few runs at the picnics and he got beat, and now he's won a Metropolitan Grade over in Adelaide. So he's got a little bit of a future. But
there you go.
Yeah, we are always looking through digital to buy a few. We've had a few misses, but he's one of the hits.
There you go. Quick one. What are your background on what you're doing now? So Trav, you're doing a bit of race calling and media work. You're a broadcaster. You've dabbled in lots of things. You've worked at racing.com in the past. What are you doing now? What's the passion? What do you want to get down? What do you want to do?
Yeah, free agent for hire is probably the way to put it. But I think
you're still calling.
Still race calling, and still that's a massive passion of mine. It's something I've always wanted to do since being a young kid, and I've got to a point now where I think I'm competent at it. Getting opportunities race calling in Victoria is extremely hard. You're behind a lot of really good callers, and there's just not that many opportunities. But when they come around, I'm very happy to sort of take the most of them. Over the past 2 years, done a lot of form analysis with RSN, which has been really good.
Yes.
So filling in, on the big Saturday and Sunday morning shows like Correct Weight. And also the morning panel when a few of the major guys are away, and doing a lot of work on the Saturday race days. Last year covering the Melbourne Cup was something that was, a bit of a bucket list item for me. Yeah, like something when you grow up sort of wanting to be in broadcasting, you get an opportunity to cover such a big day. Like that's a career goal ticked. And then from outside of that, those jobs, like I'm just being honest, sometimes they're very few and far between. It can be a bit, one week you're very busy, one week you're not. So it's just trying to find other income streams as well while you're still trying to focus on that passion. And I had the really good grounding at racing.com and TRP, learning all the camera side and the behind the scenes side. So really, I'm in a position now where I'm across a lot of different parts of the media and really love what I do.
Great. Very lucky to have been in an industry you love. Nick, you're a form analyst and mounting yard and whatnot. We'll touch on your mounting yard stuff a bit later in the program, but that's basically what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, I've sort of landed a bit of a role with RSN as well. So been doing a bit on the radio there.
Yep.
Form-wise, doing a little bit for Racing.com, doing the form in Tasmania. So that's been good. And then, doing the mounting yard stuff as well that I do. So I usually head out to the track Wednesday and Saturday and send out some information to my subscribers. Had a bit of a light winter. I tried to make a return to footy that didn't necessarily go to plan, but I'm ready to rip back into it for the spring. Just mainly, pretty much form and mounting yards me. Got a few opportunities in the media, but main passion's probably just I love just going to the races, and that's probably a good thing for me, just getting out to the yard, those meetings that I can get to and go from there.
Keen to chat about mounting yard and form with both of you. But Trav, just want to start with you regarding the broadcasting and the race calling. It's incredibly important to the industry. And as race callers cop a little bit of negative feedback from punters out there at times. Why do you think it's so important? I can put a Betfair spin on this, obviously, through in-play betting and stuff like that, but it's incredibly important to the industry.
Yeah, I think I think it would sound, without race calling, I just don't, the horse races to me is just weird.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think, especially Melbourne, do the best. Like, I think, maybe biased, but the majority of the best race callers I know come from Victoria.
Yeah.
And, you learn through, schools of guys before you how to be accurate, how to be informed, how to be entertaining, how to get all those sort of key parts out. And I think the key, though, from a wagering perspective and even from a viewing perspective, is you just want someone who can inform you as much as possible and deliver it as accurate summation of the race as what's happened. And I think for the most part, the callers that we have in Australia do that very, very well.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. It's a good shout. Do you consider in-play betting or punters when you're race calling? Is that a consideration, or is it just more getting the right information across? Yeah,
I think you're probably considering all punters. In terms of in-play, I know how the market will react to certain callers, and having talked to a lot of guys who do in-play, there's certain callers that they love having at the races and certain ones they don't. So my style sometimes is to be a bit proactive. Like, I can go a little bit early on a horse that's like moving into the race, which can catch you out. But it's not, I'd say it's probably not in the back of my mind. When I'm calling a race, I'm not thinking, oh, geez, I've stuffed this up for the in-play punter. I think probably for the in-play punter, they'd rather you probably make a mistake in a way, because if you're late to a horse that's swooping, they've got the chance to get the bigger odds. I don't think they would necessarily love the accuracy of like Matt Hill or Adam Ozanski and these sort of guys who get a lot of things right.
Yeah, someone that's bet in play a fair bit.
I was going to ask you.
Adamo just he can sit on the bench at those meetings because he's so accurate. But the market really just he'll be calling something and it's $1.50 and you just know it's going to win. He's one that's super accurate. Matt Hill's probably a bit. He's probably more reactive. He sort of waits for things to happen, which can give you a little bit of time in play. But then sometimes you get like TB and he'll be declaring something, 300 out, and it's $1.20 by then, or even shorter. So it can have a big impact, the calls on the in-running betting, for sure.
You've done a bit of in-play punting. There are in-play punters that do it solely off the radio or have the radio,
which I find fascinating.
Yeah, which is radio's ahead of the vision on TVs generally. It's faster, but then you've got the people at the track. How did you go about doing it? Was it on track mainly?
Yeah, I'm probably not the most successful in-play punter, but I know a lot of people, they like to back the leaders. You'll see, a horse that might SP $8 and it jumps straight to the lead. It might be $3 in run. So I was probably thinking more to the fact of those horses that get out the back and might find their right race shape more looking at them. And I had a few handy results backing horses that were flying home from the back, but they're few and far between, especially in Victoria, when we have a lot of slow run races where there are a lot of leader dominated races. But yeah, that was probably more my angle, looking for the value late in the straight, that last 200, who's flying home might get there. Sometimes you get a bit of heartbreak. They might beat a half head and you get 100 to 1 or something. And the guys that are probably taking the $1.20, the leader, are making more money than you are in that sort of time frame. But I know a lot of successful in play guys that, they're happy to take $3 about the $8 chance that finds the lead, because that's where it's
their true odds at that point in time.
Yeah, that's where they think that the value is still in that price.
Did you use race calling much, or was it more just vision and eye with that?
Probably just more eye, but you're definitely taking a note of what the caller's saying. The caller might go, this horse lobbed in the box seats in a lovely spot. It's travelling beautifully, and the horse might go from $2.15 to $1.50 because one of the radio players has heard that and go, great, like bang, you know. So they have a big impact, definitely, on the in-play betting.
Yeah. When you get assigned a meeting, say Sandown midweek, how do you go about prepping for race calling? Are you doing the form? Are you doing the colours? Are you looking at barriers? What's the starting point?
Yeah, I'd love to get assigned a Sandown midweek. Mine are usually,
You've done Mornington and stuff like that. Saturdays. And
mine are usually out
Eden
wide.
Hope.
Yeah, Eden Hope.
I didn't want to talk you down here.
That's usually what. But I'm very happy doing those meetings. Like cut my teeth going to those meetings, and I love the sort of country races, the big, especially those cup days, and what it gives to the community. But in terms of answering your actual question, in terms of doing form for a meeting I'm calling, I don't approach it too differently to how I do form for an actual meeting. Keep it very the same. I want to be as informed as possible. So I'd probably say for a general Victorian meeting, probably do 5 or 6 hours of form, not necessarily all at once, but just across a bit of time, and just going through all the data, breaking all that down. So use Form King ratings, and then bit of punting form stuff every now and again, and then also just crossing that with replays and my personal thoughts, things that I like looking for. And then probably the only difference when I'm preparing for a race calling meeting is you're trying to find facts that you can bring up then rather than doing the form. So you might be looking at certain stats, trainer jockey combinations that are interesting, horses, patterns that are maybe a little bit different. So that's probably the only major difference. But I'd say for the main part, it's very much the same.
How do you go back colours? Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that for most race callers that I've sort of worked under, everyone has the same way of learning the names or keeping that retention, and that is to look at the silks. Sometimes you might look at like the, if you've got two horses with very similar silks, you go to the colour of the horse or a certain distinguishing gear or things like that.
Yep.
But for the most part, it's just memorising the silks.
Talk to me about eye versus data. You mentioned punting form. Form King. I use punting form and Form King. We had Dave Funt on episode 2 last week of Layback with Betfair, talking about Form King and all the ways you use Form King, which I do know. How do you go about data versus the eye, replays versus sectionals, etc., etc.? And I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I think, growing up within the industry, and like I'd probably, without even noticing, was doing form from a very young age, and like just things you'd never even thought you were picking up, you were. Didn't probably really understand about the data side till it got to about 18, 19, and was like, I should probably try and learn a little bit about sectionals and how races are run and how that will suit different horses. And I think glad that I've grown up in this period, like where that stuff is, whilst it's not as accessible as I think the industry should make it, but you can, if you're willing to pay a little bit of money, you're able to get access to some pretty cutting edge information. And then I think the key to it is not just taking it on face value. I sort of feel like a lot of guys that are coming through that I hear these days, especially younger guys, they take the rating too much on face value. You've got to interrogate it. I think that's where the real value lies in the data, is going, okay, this is why this horse, ran 4 lengths above benchmark his last 400, because the race, had a bit of a mid-race squeeze, and he was the one that was able to get the drag into it. Can he reproduce that off a slow tempo? Maybe not. So his rating's going to come down maybe 2 points. So where does that line him up here? That's the key bit for me. And I kind of don't subscribe to the eye or data being better than the other. I think you really need to use both. Most of the real good judges I know are using both, and that's really where I sit. So I'm trying to look as much information as possible. So whether that's jump outs between runs, trials, I really don't think, I know there's a lot of people that specialize in one or the other, but I think if you can take in as much information, especially if you're younger in the game and you're trying to learn, better off you'll be.
I'll ask you this question, Nick. Are you doing replays and your knowledge of the races and the horse first, and then using data to back up, or is data your first standpoint when doing the form?
It's probably a bit of both. You can scroll through and sort of have a look at a horse's replay. I use punting form, so when you look at sort of the horse, you can see all its data anyway. So I probably look, at the data and say, okay, it's gone fast for the 2, and then to the post it's gone, say for the 2 it's the quickest race, to the post it's gone 8 fastest, and I go watch the replay and go, oh, it's held up the whole time. Things like that you can probably look at, but probably just a bit of a mix. When you're looking at it, sometimes you can just tell watching a race without even looking at the data, like that was fast or that was incredibly slow. There's definitely races like that where you can sort of look and go, okay, you don't really need the data to tell you what happened there. Probably like Trav, I think you got these days everyone I know pretty much mixes both. That's having a real crack. That they're either more skewed to one side or the other, but I think nowadays probably a lot more people are skewed towards data than necessarily eye. But I don't know too many people out there that are just going to have a bet purely off a rating and not watch a replay.
But there are, there are, especially at Betfair, there are a lot of automated clients and data clients that are good at what they do. But I tend to agree. I think even speaking to people who've gone down that data path in the last 10 years or 15 years, are noticing that the market is so aligned with the data and the ratings now that there's more of a I want to say edge, I guess, or more positivity in going back and actually analysing the horse's runs and patterns and stuff like that.
I reckon that's been a real swing too. So I think I've been using data 8 years and used multiple different providers during that time. And pretty much every database you can get access to for paid, they've all got their pros and cons, and it's finding out which one works best for you. But I've seen that huge shift, especially in the last 2 years, where the last start rating is so weighted in a horse's price now, especially early. And a lot of horses and are also priced on their expected rating of last start, heavily on SP. The horse, for example, who's been racing through the winter in Victoria, is a horse called Rheinberg. And his best rating, he probably sits at just a Saturday open class horse and or benchmark 90 type of horse. He's always priced like he's a bit better than that. And I love those sort of horses because it gives me an opportunity to go, your median, your 7-run sort of average of the prep or whatever, you're unlikely to actually hit where the market's saying.
Yes.
And that can be your edge rather than focusing on that last start number and SP, which is just so heavily weighted into the big automated groups and into the price assessing, like early, which is obviously mainly automated. I think your edge now is trying to find the negatives in those horses.
It's a good shout, and something that Dave articulated last episode is the ratings, but the wind, there's track bias, there's patterns that influence ratings.
Oh, yeah.
That people just solely assessing ratings may not take into account.
It's got to be context, doesn't it? You got to know the full picture. So I think that's one thing, everyone's probably got to work out over time, isn't it? Do you just want to solely go off, well, that's a huge rating, I'm going to back it in next start, or do you want to pick it apart a bit and go, okay, this is why the leader went out 20 lengths above and it's come home well and it's fourth up, rock hard fit. There's all those sort of things you got to factor into it as well, and why it's gone so well.
Yeah, exactly right. Just before we continue down the path of form, race calling, any advice out there for someone who wants to get into race calling?
I think just start. Yeah, that's probably my best advice.
Just watch races and start calling?
Yeah, start practicing on the TV from home. Like, so accessible racing these days, like free to air with .com and, you know, getting up on your laptop and stuff. So I would just start practicing, you know, learning the colours. I would not, if I was practicing, I'd be practicing live. I think too many people practice on replay and you know what's going to happen. That actually isn't, you know, it's not, it's a bit of a cheat that way. Yeah. Practicing live, you've got to, you know, actually try and surmise the race. And then, you know, if you get comfortable doing that, buy yourself some binoculars, try and, you know, buy a stand and look, the broadcast boxes at Caulfield, Flemington, Moonee Valley, they sit vacant. There's all these broadcast boxes built from in the 80s when they used to have 6 callers on track. Now they've got 1. So you can go up there and you can pretty much be in the same vantage point as Matt Hill and get as good practice as you want to yourself.
There you go.
And probably go up and, I know Matty pretty well, you could go up and introduce yourself to him. So
lovely man, Matt Hill. Yep.
Does seem like a friendly community.
Yeah, I'd say that's very much true. For
that's wonderful.
Race callers, I've never had one that I've had a bad dealing with.
That's great. Do you have an idol? Anyone you looked up to?
Greg Miles was probably, for me. I didn't necessarily have his like time calling. I didn't work with him that much. He retired before I really got going. But like his calls early days, like we were talking about, you know, Northerly, Sunline, Reduced Choice, Mackay Diva, Lonhro, like I still don't think anyone's nailed the big moments.
Let's get to Greg Miles and have a listen to his call of the 2002 Caulfield Stakes. You mentioned Lonhro and Sunline. Let's have a listen to it.
The Sunline coming to the 600 metres, doing it like the Sunline of old at the moment. Houston off a length and a half away. 2 to Lonhro. Beedman hasn't asked for the big one yet, and they've got away to Distinctly Secret. Sunline came to the turn by a length and a half. Excitement rippling around Caulfield now. The great mare's going to corner with a good lead on Lonhro. Sunline for home. Caulfield is erupting now. She's by 3. Lonhro's giving chase, but the great mare at the 200. Charles went for the whip. Lonhro's got some work to do now. Under the whip, he stretches hard. It's Sunline by a length. Lonhro trying to level up. A great battle. Sunline, Lonhro. Lonhro's getting to the great mare, and Lonhro beats Sunline by a neck. Fallings Houstonov, Republic Lass, Prize Gem, Distinctly Secret, Tally Thunder. We've witnessed one of the great Yalumba Stakes.
Brilliant call.
Oh, yeah. There's just so many things for me, like as a caller, that he just hits in that call. So excitement rippling around Caulfield as they turn for home. You know, Lonhro.
Do you know it by
stretching
word for
hard.
word,
Oh, no, close. He stretches hard at the 100, and he just captured it perfectly. The, you know, champion on the way out, up against the up and coming superstar. It's a great race. Like all those great calls are helped by great races. You need the actual equine athletes to do it, but so good.
Very true. Did you have a favourite race caller, or do you have a favourite race caller?
Oh, I think that like Greg Miles has some big moments, doesn't he? And growing up, he was the caller I listened to. Like, never forget Lonhro winning that Australian Cup and the crowd roaring. What was it? Go Lonhro, go! And you know, there's a few calls like that. The Mackay Diva call, champion becomes a legend. He's got the good one-liners. And then Matty Hill did a really good job with those Winx Cox plates. What was that one where the Melbourne Cup where he banged on the table? The Vauban
Declare, yeah. He's won it for Australia.
You know, he's got a lot of passion, Matty. I'm sure if, you know, you gave Adamo and TB those opportunities and credits, you could come up with a big call for them as well. I think Trav's right. You got to have, no one's going to remember a call that won a benchmark 64 at Bourneville. You know, you got to have the right race to remember.
Yeah. Would you, if you got an opportunity, and something I don't like the scripted pieces as well as the emotional side of what comes naturally. What's your take on that? Would you, or do you, when you speak to race callers, do they script certain things or have it in their head?
I think the majority no, but probably the horses that are being scripted is like Caviar and Winx.
Winx, Third Cox,
and like I'm glad I never had to do that, because there's a lot of pressure on calling them because they're expected to win. They're probably going to win. So you need something to capture the moment.
Yeah.
You can't just say she's won again.
And it's going to be replayed for
replayed
hundreds
forever.
of years.
I think, though, for like the majority, say like last year's Cox Plate, you don't need to script anything.
Yeah.
The majority of the big races these days, if there's not a headline, really like a borderline legend, then you're all right, I think. I don't think you need to go the script way.
How do you sit on photo finishes? Do you make your call? Is it case by case? How
I
do
think-
you judge other race callers on photo finishes?
Very case by case.
Seems like the track is important
Yeah,
there. Like you've got to
track's
know
huge.
the angle.
Like don't get me started on camera
A
angle.
lot of the times, the
Box
like
angle.
say Flemington, the call's not on the line, so you got to know. That seems like the main thing, isn't it? If you're going to have a crack, you got to really know that track.
Yeah.
How is like camera angles? Flemington, like down the straight, the camera angle's awful for starters, and you're not on the line and
Well,
the winning post either.
Flemington's kind of very interesting in the way the grandstand's built. It's not really vertical with the home straight, so it's on a
on an
lean as it is. So yeah, unless they completely move the position from the grandstand, there's not much they can do. Like I know there's a lot of talk about the Flemington angle. It is kind of strange given it's the biggest course in Australia.
You got a camera angle that
Yeah.
if you're outside fence, put a half a length
Yeah, pretty
to the
much.
finish line. Like,
But yeah, maybe it's something they'll look at in time. But yeah, they've all got their own little quirks. and-
yeah, maybe that's what makes it exciting. The idiosyncrasies of camera angles. Maybe it would be boring without them.
possibly.
Who knows? Hard for the in-play punters. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's get into mounting yard, and I don't know whether you do much or you grew up around horses, Trav. But
Oh yeah, I obviously grew up around horses, and I got
Yeah.
a big love for the horse. But I think I can tell you, there's 4 legs, there's a tail, and there's
so
a
leave
head.
that to your brother.
Yeah, exactly.
How'd you get into mounting yard over, or more so over form, or why did you go down the mounting yard angle?
I feel like growing up, I always, I'd go out to track work. Early days, I thought I was going to be a trainer, so I was sort
I
of
was going to ask you guys, did you ever want to be trainers or
yeah. When I was younger, for sure.
breeders?
But then, the reality sort of sets in. Unless you're Kieran Maher or Chris Waller or someone at the top, you're probably not making a lot of money. And then,
Couldn't get up at 3 o'clock every morning.
and that's the other thing, you have to work a bit too hard for my liking. So, but going out when I was younger, I always go out to track work and assessing sort of with learning off dad a lot, but probably not really even realizing when I was very young.
Yes.
And then as I ended up working for TRP, which is Racing.com's their production arm, and
What does it stand for?
Thoroughbred Racing Productions.
Yeah.
Started going to the races a bit more, and then I ended up filming the mounting yard cameras, and then I sort of started to talk to a few people that had an interest in it, and I sort of already knew a lot of the stuff that they were looking at, and I just probably had to learn, what was a good parade versus a bad parade. I could tell if a horse was, short in their action. I could tell if they weren't fit.
Yeah.
I could tell all those kind of things. It was probably just matching up, and watching all over time. What are the negatives and what are the positives? Because I feel like I already had a great understanding of the horse. With just being around it your whole life, going to the yearling sales and things like that. When I got dragged along when I was 10 or 12, and it's probably the last thing you wanted to do. So much of that has just helped me now. And it's probably a bit of an edge compared to some people who just have to learn it their own way. And Dad's definitely taught me a lot. I don't think he'd probably say he has, but just sort of observing and things like that. I think it's probably where my edge lies. I'm capable form analyst and can tip, winners doing that. But I think if I was really going to hone in on what's my best skills, definitely at the mounting yard.
How do you utilise your mounting yard through the exchange? Obviously, you can bet on horses, but any lay betting if horses aren't parading well as well?
Yeah, it's probably something I think, everyone can evolve and adapt to new things the exchange is new, but, adapt new things into how they operate and wager.
Yep.
There's definitely been times where I've seen a horse out of the yard and just think that, this can't win. So I'll lay it. But there's been other times where, there's times where I want to back a few others to beat it. And then, one other horse wins and I think, why didn't I just lay it? So, definitely sort of working out the right thing to do.
The gulf between the two is, people underrate it. Like
100% they do.
There's good tipsters and then there's good punters, and often the two don't correlate.
I 100% agree with that, and that's a kind of a key lesson. If you're watching this as a recreational punter or someone trying to get into the game, it's a massive difference. So the
100%.
markets and the way that the markets have changed, even in 15 years, 10 years, last 5 years, they're always changing. And whenever you think you've got the game worked out or getting to a point, things change.
The market and everything changes so much that you just have to adapt, don't you? You know, horses that were 280 a year ago now 250. They still bet at 250. You know, that's what you got to adapt to and things like that. So yeah, it's ever changing, that's for sure.
And I think the beauty of Betfair in that is you can change and do whatever you want on an exchange, because like you said, you can back, you can lay, you can trade in and out of markets, you can bet in play, whatever it might be.
Set your own odds, you know. Oh, it's 250 against the corpse of 230. I might get 250 here on the fair. Someone might just come in and match me for my 200 or 300, and you know, then you get your price.
Yep. How do you see markets reacting to Parade mounting yard?
It's big, isn't it?
Like they definitely can,
because all the big syndicates now
they have yard watchers.
They have yard watchers.
Give us some insight into that. How many yard watchers are there for big syndicates
do you
on a
see
Saturday?
the same people?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's one, the biggest one. They have them everywhere.
Yeah.
I've been to Edenhope and they have people there. You know, so they have them
do you
everywhere.
know them now? Or you just see the same people?
It's like a workplace. You know, you go to the races and you see the same people every week. There's probably, I would say, there's probably 5 to 10 people that are, you know, nearly every meeting watching the mounting yard in Melbourne at least. Yep. So yeah, you get to know them, but you know, there's a lot of information that gets to have the Ladbrokes have their own stuff with the mounting yard. Bella that puts out her information on for free. Like there's a lot of information that gets out now, and that can impact the marketplace. But definitely when those big yard watchers are against one, they can have a big impact on the market. And the other way, if they really like one and they give it the green light, they can definitely back. So, you know, I might like a horse that, you know, I think, geez, it's going to be hard to beat. It's Parade absolutely great, and everyone else will think the same thing. They send it out, you know, the syndicate watchers send it out to their mob, and then someone else sends it out to their subscribers, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's 3 to 250, and that can purely be from the yard.
And does it get to a point, I see this massive, does it get to a point where something you were really keen on actually becomes a lay bet because it snowballs and markets tend to overreact so much? Now we've got, I say this all the time, we've got plunge apps, we've got drifters and firmers, flames on corporates. Yeah. Like everyone's highlighting these late market moves. Is there a world where you would potentially go, oh, I like this at 3, I thought it was a great bet, but now it's $2, like I can't possibly have it?
I try more these days. I've sort of learned that when I'm doing the yard, I don't want to go into the meeting with just like pre, you know, really stern on my thoughts pre-race. I try to be a bit more open. So if I see a horse and it does tick every box, and it was $3 early, but now it's $2.30, you know, that's the price now. I got to assess, you know, the $3 doesn't matter. Yeah. What do I think from the yard? And it's $2.30 now. So that's something I've really worked on lately, because I think early days I was probably more not relying on the form, but I was thinking, oh yeah, this will still just win, you know. Yeah. Whereas now I'm like, well, you know, there's more factors than that, isn't there? Then my key factors are from the yard. So yeah, there probably does become times where you're like, this is a bet, and it even goes the other way, you know. I could, if I was backing this horse at $3, wanting to back it, I'd lay it. But at $6, it's a little bit different. There's a few key negatives there. It might not walk that well.
But you might know why it's 50.
And you might go, okay, well, now it's $6, you know, it's a bet. So there's things like that you can definitely look at. And I think that with the yard, like, you know, you got to adapt some form and, you know, knowing the race before you go and do that. But yeah, it can have a big late impact, the yard, probably that last 3 minutes when there's a lot of action. And, you know, sometimes I might think, oh, that was a pure yard push, and it could be completely something different. How do you really know? But there's definitely times, say like Vauban's drifting the Melbourne Cup. I think, you know, that when he was really getting out that last 5 minutes, that was yard inspired, because it came into the yard and it was probably your last pick off the way it looked in the mounting yard.
So tell me why it was such a bad parade.
It was just very big in condition. You know, you get to a Melbourne Cup, he'd probably.
And this, because I find this fascinating, because you would never have laid eyes on this horse before. You may have been down to Werribee or something. But
I saw a bit of vision on him when he was at Flemington and had that track gallop, and he got up and about and he was a bit worked up and just having a sweat. So I kind of expected to see that. He's more relaxed than I thought he would be, but yeah, he just, when you compare him to a few of the other runners that have had, runs in the Metro, the Caulfield Cup, the Moonee Valley Cup, they've had the grounding to get them rock hard fit. He just didn't look at the same level as a few of the others. So that's probably the hardest thing with traveling the internationals. If they don't have a run here, you're a bit behind and you've got to really get it right. And I think on that occasion, a horse like him, he might have just appreciated potentially acclimatising a bit better and having a run. So yeah, he was one that definitely had a big impact late on that market. Romantic Warrior was very interesting in the Turnbull. He came to the Turnbull and saw him in the yard, and it was a bit like, well, this probably can't win. Like, there was a lot of talk going in that he was underdone, and you saw him in the yard.
And the yard backed up that
definitely,
talk?
Definitely. And then he had a bit of sweat coming from behind. He had a bit of a belly on him. And then you saw him Cox Plate Day. And
was he still sweating, or? No,
Cox Plate Day was like, that's, people can say horses improve and, but that was actually one where you go, okay, this horse has improved 3 or 4 lengths. Like, I think you could actually put a margin on it because he just looked like a different animal. He's more focused. He wasn't as fresh. He just looked in the zone that day. And I think
so. When you say more focused, are we talking like on his toes on Turnbull Stakes Day and just up and about and clippy cloppy as some call it?
Yeah, definitely. And just, he was just, he was excited to be there. He was like, I'm back at the races. Here we go. But he's, when he's using that, it's probably nervous energy really.
Yeah.
Before the race, then it's going to hurt him in the finish, isn't it? If he's underdone.
So Cox Plate,
where he's coming to Cox Plate and he's just relaxed. He's just walking around like he owns the joint.
Yeah.
This is my track. So, that was one that was very notable. Let's say Turnbull, I was hard against him. Cox Plate, like, this horse has improved so much, and if it is the level everyone's talking about and the market thinks, like, it will win. And I don't even think he handled Moonee Valley that well that day. He sort of crabbed around the corner, but his class showed in the end.
I still think he was lucky to win. Lobbed in the perfect spot as J-Mac always does. And
J-Mac.
And that's the other thing you can think from the yard, like, oh, this horse is perfect. You still need the luck in the run, don't you? And that's why you got to take the right price at the end of the day. You can tick all your boxes from your form point of view and yard, but if you don't get the luck in a certain race, like Mr. Brightside looked great as well. You could have thought, oh, that was the best he looked all campaign as well. And you're taking $11 and you think, oh, what a great bet, but you've lost.
Well, the Moonee Valley Racing Club still thought he won because they released the streamers.
Yeah.
You mentioned before how long it takes to do the form. I laugh when people ask me that question. So I do the form maybe Wednesday night for a Saturday meeting. I'm constantly doing the form until literally they jump. Like, there's so much. You mentioned yard 3 minutes out in the markets. Like, I can't answer that because, and I don't know if you're the same, because so much is happening in that 3 or 4 days. You might listen to shows, you might hear the trainer talk, you might look at something else, there might rain. Like, so many variables up until race start.
Yeah, I think I would be the exact same. Like, in terms of, much like everyone who's doing probably content stuff for Saturday meeting, you want to get it out as soon as possible. So you're probably doing form as early as you can.
Yep. So you're still picking up mistakes in the market then potentially. I know it's hard to get on or whatnot, but
that's when the most mistakes are when they first go up.
Yeah. You can get on. For me, I'll probably do a majority of my. I do it like acceptances when they release at sort of 11 a.m. Look through that for a good 2 hours. Then when it all gets through to the databases about 2 p.m., I'll look through the ratings, go to the replays, check through that. And then you've got an understanding of, okay, if I'm going to do a podcast, if I'm going to do something on the radio, whatever, I can already articulate what horse I'm going to tip.
Yeah.
Then if I'm betting, it's a completely different story. I want to take in more information if I'm betting personally.
I hate that though, because you might tip, we do layback with Betfair Thursday mornings. I might tip something really confidently. And I was like this with a horse at Caulfield the other day, very keen on it, trialled superbly. But the fence was off, it drew barrier 2, and it rained heavily in the morning.
Yeah.
So you tip it on a Thursday or whatever, and then 10 minutes out from jump, I didn't want to be with it at all.
Yeah, you nearly have another bet in the race.
So so much changes. It's hard to grasp or grapple with, and it's hard being a content provider as opposed to a tipster or a punter. It's constant juggle.
Yeah, I think that's with the subscription service we have with the racing.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Patreon?
So yeah, through Patreon, which works really well for us. So we put out sort of a Saturday podcast, say late Wednesday night, Thursday.
Yep.
And then, that will have our thoughts.
It's like first thoughts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you can still have some pretty strong opinions, and they still may line up on Saturday, but then we'll send a tip sheet Saturday morning, which is much more aligned with what conditions you're going to get. And then you've still got, the ability, then we have, different group chats through, different social media platforms and all that, where you can go, still send some late information, which, it was really good.
Where can people find that?
Yeah, you head to the Racing Show Twitter. I suppose that's probably the best way, and you can find all the links there, or through the Racing Show Spotify, or just searching us individually. You'll find it pretty quick.
There you go. I want to ask you guys about Betfair. How's it start with you? How has Betfair obviously helped you in your wagering journey, I guess, through mounting yard and form analysts? And I know you use Betfair a bit.
Yeah, it's another tool, isn't it? It's another thing you can learn from. You can learn so much from SPs and things like that, can't you? And the late market moves. Trav was kind of talking about before on the other little feature we did, that the late money can have a big impact on the late SP, and sometimes you might see a Betfair SP that's shorter than the actual SP, and that's usually a good indication that there was a very big push in the marketplace. Someone was very confident on that horse. So it's another tool in doing the form from that point of view. But I probably love the feature I love the most about it's BSP.
Yep.
I'm someone that can have a crack at a favourite, but my default position is probably to be against them. I don't know. That's just probably most races I look at. I'm probably not trying to find the favourite and just think, this is a mile I want to bet up. I'm probably looking for a horse at a bit of value. And a lot of the bets I send from the yard, are probably small or very small bets at horses at 50 to 1, $26, $21 plus, and when they're $21 on sports bet and they're 36 on BSP, well, you know where you're going, don't you?
Yeah. But you find that market edge because of Betfair being 101%.
And that's the thing. Where do you take, even when you're framing your own markets, you go, okay, I'm $4 this horse and I need to get it shorter. Where's the first place you take the percentage out? The roughies. And
what you find with corporates, recreational clients are going to bet on a horse at 100 to 1 because it's 100 to 1 anyway. They're not going to say, 100 to 1's actually under the odds, are they?
No.
So that's why you saw with Betfair in the last racing season, there are a lot of horses that were 100, 150s that won. And Betfair, they're actually realistically $300 chances, or we had a massive $736 BSP in the last racing season. So that's a good shout. So why should punters use Betfair, I guess, over other WSPs, Trev?
The value in it is just the amount of options you can have. Especially for me, I've had instances where Nick's sent something from the mounting yard and I haven't even really done form for the race, and he's potted a favourite and it's $2, and I'll go, I could probably lay this, and I'd say the market too, that looking forward to the spring, we all get excited about the big races. The Betfair market for the Melbourne Cup is the best. He just gives you so many opportunities, especially that last 2 weeks when the liquidity's quite high. You've got the call of the card situation, those sort of things. We sort of took a couple of different positions on horses, and we're able to do that, through a couple of different WSPs, through the call of the card, through Betfair. Fortunately, we still lost on the race, but we stuffed up. It was that sort of side of it gives you just a complete other angle. Whereas if the exchange didn't exist, you could just never do that.
You know what I love about the World Cup and Betfair in particular? It's a global market, so you're betting against UK clients as well. So you wake up and it's been daytime in the UK, and Vauban's shortened a point. He's 5s into 4s overnight when we're asleep, and then he drifts when they're asleep because we're an Australian market are laying. It's an amazing market.
Oh, the last 2 years, the Melbourne Cup's been great. Deauville Legend, and then Vauban, and they both got beat. And it's just you could have taken, I can't remember the exact BSP, but it was crazy odds you could have taken for Gold Trip when he won the BSP.
Yep.
And, even without a fight, for a horse who won
It's
a
30,
Caulfield
wasn't it?
Cup.
Yeah.
Very Elegant was the same. She
Without a
was,
Yeah,
fight,
VE.
without a fight was $10.06. Very Elegant, I think, was $19 or something around that mark, and she was much shorter at corporates. So, I love that. That's well described. Gonna leave it there, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Trav, Nick Noonan, head over to their podcast, Patreon, find them on social media. Respect your time and opinions, and I love doing my job because I get to learn from guys like you. So thank you so much for coming on.
No worries.
Hope everyone enjoyed Layback with Betfair.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.